The dramatic collapse of World Trade Center 7 is something everyone ought to see. I suspect that few have actually looked at it to date. It's very dramatic. It would be helpful actually to show a demolition of some other building, which we know is controlled demolition. So you can see how it dips in the middle and comes straight down and rapidly. And also you see coming off the sides these jets of gas and debris, smoke puffing out of there. And that's very typical of explosive demolition. All these characteristics, the straight down fall and the rapid fall. And then you would look at, for comparison, Building 7, and you can see what I mean. It really does look like an explosive demolition. Something that needs to be explored very carefully, but the characteristics are there. So you look at the building, you see it dip in the middle first, and the sides bow in a little bit, and then you see it come down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just like that. And right down onto its footprint. You see, that's the goal of controlled demolition. You don't want the building to tip over, which is much easier to do with explosives, actually. Just knock out the supports and let her tip. The trusses in the building made it very asymmetrical. There were 24 central columns, steel columns. And for those to fail in such a way that that building would collapse in the center first and then come straight down, instead of toppling over, for instance, no.
The entire roofline cascades downward neatly into its own footprint. At the same time, jets of debris can be seen shooting out of the walls and going up floor by floor. After viewing this video, NIST can simply declare, NIST has seen no evidence that the collapse of World Trade Center 7 was caused by bombs, missiles, or controlled demolition.
In the FEMA report, I think they were fairly honest, and it's interesting as you read what they said about Building 7. So, I'm reading with great interest. At the end they say, well, our best hypothesis, now this is the fire and damage hypothesis. That's the only hypothesis they looked at seriously. Okay, so our best hypothesis, they said, has only a low probability of occurrence. And I'm saying, that's right. That's exactly right. Why don't you quantify that? But they didn't quantify. Oh. But they did admit, it has only a low probability of occurrence, and that's to their credit. The 9/11 Commission didn't even mention Building 7 collapse,
NIST and FEMA published pictures of damage to the southwest wall at the 18th floor and minor roof damage. The NAST chart of the damages shows a substantial gouge in the south face from the 10th floor to the ground, affecting 3 of the structural columns. Here begin the problems in the NIST preliminary report on the collapse of World Trade Center 7. The first column to collapse is said to be column number 80, which was untouched by the structural damage. This is evident in the fall of the east penthouse, supported by column number 80. This precedes global collapse, but what happens next is not so easily explained. The building does not fall over in the direction of the gouging damage, and it does not fall over in the direction of the failed column beneath the east penthouse. Now, it is one thing to dispute the controlled demolition hypothesis. It is another to pretend that these pictures do not suggest it at all.
My argument is it needs to be investigated. There is another hypothesis here, staring us in the face, of explosive demolition. And, okay, you have the hypothesis of fire, but the official reports don't analyze this other possibility of explosive demolition. That is strange. Scientifically, I say it's a viable hypothesis. They look at just the one, and I'm saying good science requires us to consider other hypotheses, in particular the explosive demolition hypothesis. Let's study it out. Let's debate it scientifically. Let's put it on the table, for heaven's sakes. There's a lot at stake here to understand what caused the collapse of these buildings. We should be able to discuss it dispassionately as scientists. It's hard to do, but we should be able to do that.
Coming up, were pre-positioned explosives behind the collapse of the Twin Towers on 9/11? We'll talk to a BYU University professor who says Muslims probably not to blame for bringing down the buildings after all. When the situation returns.
Tucker Carlson, one of his associates, emailed me early in the day. This was a Monday, I remember, and asked me what would I like to show. And I said, well, in particular, I want to show this video clip which shows the collapse of Building 7. We've talked a lot about that, and it's what I wanted to discuss. The building collapsed about 5:21 p.m. on the afternoon of September 11th, 2001. But since then, it has not been shown on the media that I know of. The towers, yes, over and over and over, and it's the Muslim hijackers that brought down over and over, we're told that. But Building 7, no. So I asked if them to show this actual collapse and some photos of Building 7, before especially, so you could see what it looked like. This huge 47-story tower or skyscraper. Now, during the interview, I could not see what everybody else saw. I only had a camera pointing at me, so I had to ask Tucker, well, let's look at the collapse of Building 7. Have you shown it yet? I asked him that 2 or 3 times, and finally said, no, we're not showing that clip. And I said, well, what are we going to discuss then? Let's talk about the molten metal, okay? And I did, then proceed to talk about the molten metal. But he would not show the collapse of that. Now, of course, he didn't explain why. He just didn't show the collapse of Building 7. But that was a big surprise to me, because that was what I had asked them. They asked me, what do you want to show? This is it. And then let's look at the collapse of that building. I've looked at the official reports by FEMA and so on regarding the collapse of these buildings.
Right.
I'd like to look at the collapse of Building 7 in just a minute. It was not even hit by a jet, so we should look at that one.
The 2 towers, the explanation has been that the fire inside was so intense that it weakened the structural steel and that each floor collapsed down upon the next in a pancake fashion, and they imploded in on themselves. Is that essentially, I think, what people think?
Yeah, that's basically it, yeah. And so what I've done is to analyze these reports. But I would like to do a little experiment with you, Tucker, if I could. I sent out a video clip of the collapse of Building 7, because most people haven't actually seen that one, and that's the crux of the argument that I'm presenting.
Okay, to sum up very quickly the argument for us, you believe there were explosives in the buildings planted by someone, detonated.
Well, yeah.
Is that correct?
In other words, the hypothesis to be tested is there's 2 hypotheses here. One is fire and damage caused all 3 buildings to collapse.
Okay.
The other is that explosives in the buildings may have caused the collapse. And so then we analyze and see which fits the data better. And I've done that in my 25-page paper. I'm not going to let you off the hook. I really want to do this experiment with you to look at.
We don't have a lot of time for experiments, Professor. But if you could just give us one thing to hold on to. How you make these claims or appear to make these claims? Do you have any evidence that there were bombs in the building?
Sure. Let's start with the collapse of Building 7. Can you roll the video clip that I sent to you?
Okay, I'm not sure if we can, but to specify, that is World Trade Center building number 7.
Try.
Smaller than the other 2, was not hit by a plane, of course, yet it collapsed.
Right. It's 47 stories.
That's right.
24 steel columns in the center.
Right.
Trusses asymmetrically supported. Now, I can't see what you're seeing, so
we just see the building.
World Trade Center 7, a 47-story office building 300 feet away from the North Tower, suddenly collapses. The building's tenants included the CIA, Department of Defense, IRS, Secret Service, and Rudy Giuliani's emergency bunker. And the SEC was using it to store 3,000 to 4,000 files related to numerous Wall Street investigations.